Have you ever wondered how your fuel line is routed in your MGB? Or perhaps how your brake lines are routed and, more importantly, secured in the engine bay? Do you even know how these lines make it back to the intended components within your MGB? Stick around and find out on this episode how to remove the fuel line, how to remove your brake lines, and perhaps how to even remove all of those lines plus the charcoal canister line from your MGB. Welcome to another episode of Maggie's Makeover. It's the epic automotive journey about the restoration of my 1972 MGB called Maggie. Now, I purchased Maggie in 1977. I drove her through college and then I took her off the road for over 40 years and started the restoration 2.5 years ago. You know, some people would say this is a Jeffrey Dahmer-esque sequel where I dismember this car and store the parts in baggies for future use. But either way, Maggie and I hope that you find the content both useful and entertaining. You know, we get a lot of comments on the channel, and a lot of these comments have useful tips to pass along to Mechanic Steve or great stories about your MGBs. So from time to time, I'd like to share those with you because I think you'll find those enjoyable. Our first comment comes from a gentleman by the name of Ron Cluey. And Ron, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name properly. Ron indicated that Mechanic Steve could potentially be damaging Maggie's wire harness by holding onto the ends of the wires and yanking on them when he disconnected some of the electrical connections. According to Ron, you should hold that bullet connector with a pair of pliers to reduce the stress on the wire harness components when you take them apart. Ron, thanks for that tip, and I'll make sure I pass that along to Mechanic Steve because I just spent over $600 for a brand new wire harness, and I don't want him screwing that up when he puts it back in the car. Now, our second comment came from a gentleman by the name of Ben Andrews, and Ben had some concerns that Mechanic Steve was actually using a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the posi drive screws inside of Maggie. Now, posi drive screws have a larger contact area and will allow you to take out screws without stripping them. So, Ben, I wish you had told me that earlier because Mechanic Steve actually stripped a screw on top of the transmission tunnel by using a Phillips head screwdriver on it. I'll make sure I buy Mechanic Steve a set of posi drive screwdrivers so that doesn't happen again. Thanks for the tip, Ben. Now, there are a couple of other viewers who told us some stories about their cars, and I'd like to share those with you. Our first viewer's car is from Portugal and is owned by Pedro Silva, shown here in front of his Brooklyn Green 1974 MGB. Pedro purchased the car from an 87-year-old former owner who had rescued the car and did an initial restoration, eliminating a lot of the rust that was on the car. The car's actually a US-based version that was imported into Europe. The car couldn't have gone to any better of a new owner in that Pedro is continuing the restoration process and has some pretty high standards for it. Here you can see he has actually sanded, painted, and reskinned the convertible top. He's also tackling the restoration of the bumpers by eliminating the rust on the inside and polishing the outside. Where possible, Pedro likes to refurbish the existing parts, then buy new. Pedro's also rolled up his sleeves and done a lot of work underneath the hood. He's made sure that that car is mechanically sound and that the engine bay is aesthetically pleasing to look at. Pedro's current focus is to actually strip the exterior of the car to get it ready for a complete body respray in the original Brooklyn Green. I'm sure that respray will turn out beautiful, so please send us a picture and let us know how it turns out. Now, our second viewer's car is a gorgeous late 60s, early 70s black on black pillow dash MGB owned by a gentleman by the name of Ed Ridgick in Wilmington, Delaware. Ed's been around English sports cars his entire life, as his dad used to actually race Austin Healey's and Bug-Eye Sprites. Now, although Ed had to sell his original MGB for college tuition, another one recently came into his life when an airline pilot basically gifted him this car. But it was under one condition, and that was that the car always be garaged. So what did Ed do as a retired carpenter? He built a garage specifically for this MGB. Now, Ed took a gap year between high school and college, before gap years were even popular, and he spent that time being an auto mechanic. So with this car, Ed's refurbished the steering wheel and the seats. He's also replaced the water pump and the radiator. He's refurbished the steering rack, complete with new gaiters and tie rods. He's currently looking for an engine and transmission to rebuild and put in the car. In fact, here's a list of all the things that Ed has done on his MGB, and I think you can agree it's quite an extensive list. Now, Ed, like other MGB owners, takes pride in restoring these 50-plus-year-old cars back to their original operating condition. So there's yet another example of an MGB that's found a great home and will be well cared for. Now, there's something that Pedro, Ed, and I have in common, and that's our daughters. We've been fortunate enough to share our passion for these cars with our daughters, enabling 3 owners of the next generation. Here you see Inez in the upper left is out for a ride in the Green Queen with her dad Pedro, while on the lower right, Casey and Ed share a vacation moment. In the center, Sarah meets with mechanic Steve to talk about Maggie's restoration and her plans for the car. If you haven't seen that episode, the link is in the upper right-hand corner. It's safe to say that all 3 of these young women are going to enjoy these cars well into the future. Let us know if you've enjoyed this viewer's comments section and if you'd like to see more of them in future episodes. Perhaps even share a story about your own MGB. And so now, on to the episode. Now, in our last episode, mechanic Steve completely removed Maggie's entire interior out of the car. For those of you out there thinking about taking apart or perhaps removing and replacing the entire interior on your MGB, click on the link up here to get to the playlist of those videos. I think you'll find them very useful. Now, in this episode, mechanic Steve is going to start the process to strip Maggie's entire engine bay. Specifically, he's going to talk about the approach that he's going to follow to do that, and he's going to start by removing Maggie's fuel line, all of her brake lines, and the charcoal canister line. I know it's a lot of work, but mechanic Steve is up for that challenge. And hey, before I forget, if you're enjoying this content, please subscribe, like, and share so others can enjoy it as well. Now let's head down to the garage and see how mechanic Steve is progressing. Hey, thanks Studio Steve. It's great to be back in the garage, everybody. And yes, we're going to descend further down that valley of restoration despair when we start to strip the engine bay of Maggie, because that area is going to be painted. Now, if you take a look inside the engine bay, there's just a ton of stuff that's in here that has to come out. And there's a method to our madness in how we're going to do that. You can see this is the heater box. There are a number of electrical lines and hard brake lines and fuel lines that are in front of that. So we're going to start to remove this stuff in a manner that frees all of that up so that we can then remove this. So we're going to start with the fuel line and system all the way back to the fuel pump. We're then going to get rid of these brake lines right here through this distribution junction right here, the pedal box, the master cylinder, and the brake cylinder and the master clutch cylinder. We're then going to go across over to the canister, charcoal canister right here. You can see there's a line that goes in front of the heater box. We're going to remove that, and that should free up the heater box to come out. Now, once the heater box comes out, we're going to focus our attention on the passenger side, a number of electrical components and connections up here, the coil, the windshield wiper motor, There's a horn that's further up that way, and the oil cooler. So that's the sequence we're going to follow for removing all of the items out of Maggie's engine bay. So let's roll up our sleeves and get to work. So the fuel line that runs from the fuel pump all the way up to the engine is comprised of 5 pieces. Let me take you through that. First, there's a rubber hose right here, a fuel filter, another rubber hose, a hard line that comes all the way around here to another junction, to another hard line that comes all the way down here, runs on the outside here. The inner one is for the charcoal canister, runs outside here and then back to the fuel pump. And so there are a number of connections. We're going to take this out in one piece. There's a P-clip right there, another P-clip there. We follow this around. There's a wire strapping here for a wire harness. There's another P-clip right here in front of the heater box, right? There's another piece of metal right here that wraps it to the firewall. So let's go underneath the car and I'll show you the connections that need to be taken off there to remove the line. So we're going to start disconnecting the fuel line from the bottom of the car first. And there are basically 3 connection points that we're going to start with. Let me just get you oriented. This is sort of the front of the car. So this is underneath the passenger side. I'm coming back here. And there's 3 connections that we're going to undo. One right here, one right here. These are both 7/16" bolts, nuts, I should say, right here. And then these are 1/2 inch. So let's take these off right now. I'll try to stay out of your way. Again, a 7/16. It looks like there's a lock washer with these. Let's grab this one. And now these back here are 1/2 inch. These are 1/2 inch bolts with a lock washer. And that bracket comes down. This should also come down. Now note, there's a P-clip for the wire harness right here. Let's remove that, and this bracket should come out, and it does. That's the P-clip there. And these look like they are rubber grommets that sort of hold those lines in place. So that's this one here. I would think that there's this one back here as well. There's another P-clip up here. I need a screwdriver to get that off, to get this bracket off and the rubber underneath it. Okay, so let me see if I can pry this down. There it is. So that bracket is now off. And here's the rubber piece for this. Now it's important, this bracket actually fit into like a little clamp right there. You can see that, that comes out like that. And here's the other holder of the lines. We can take that out. So that's that one. Looks like there's a wire strap right here that needs to come undone. Looks like you bend it like that and then move that out like that. Push these back like that. So let's go further back. There are another 2 connections and a clamp as well. So I'm going to move the camera further back. Let me get you oriented here. This is, we're looking back towards the rear end. And I'm going to slide this over
to here so you can see these are the other 3 connections that need to come undone. There's one here, which is a bracket with 2 7/16 bolts, a metal wrap here, and another bracket here with 7/16 bolts, and they each have the rubber sort of things that bracket the line. So let's take these off now. I'll try to stay out of your way. Notice there's a P-clip here for the wire harness that needs to come off. Now let's go further back. Here's the sort of the metal wrap on this. And now let's go to the remaining one back here. Here again, a P-clip for the wire harness. And so the remaining connection is back here. Here's the fuel line. You can see it goes up into a Jubilee clip right here. Hopefully I can just unscrew this. So that's off, and we'll disconnect it from here. We'll pull that out to free it up. So with the fuel line disconnected underneath, we can now come up to the engine bay and detach it from all of the connection points. And if you notice down in here, that's the fuel line. The line for the charcoal canister actually sits in front of the piece of metal that holds it to the firewall. So we're going to have to undo this screw right here, which is a mounting point for the charcoal canister line. So let's take that off. There's a lock washer on that. And so now with this undone, we can move that line sort of out of the way, the charcoal canister line. So next up is the 3/8 inch P-clip. There's a nut that's in front of the firewall. So let's unscrew this. Oop, that kind of fell out, but there you go. Undo the metal strap that has the wire harness on it. Last but not least, I think we have the remaining P-clips over here. One of them right here. And there is a lock washer associated with that. And the other P-clip right here. Looks like there's a lock washer and a washer on that. So now this fuel line isn't really held in by anything with the exception of, it'll rotate this back. Looks like there was a washer that came off there. Free it up from over here. Looks like we've got some connectors here that I should have taken out. We're going to undo these. And now we're able to take the entire fuel line out of the car, complete with all of the bends that are on it. So now we're going to turn our attention to removing the brake lines, and you'll see there's basically a 5-port distribution valve right in here that's bolted to the
side of the engine bay. And you'll notice on the front facing portion of the port at 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock, those are the two front brake lines. And on the rear section of this 5-port manifold, on the bottom is the rear brake line. These two actually on top of the front and the back section of this valve actually feed the master cylinder. So what we're going to do is we're first going to remove the front brake lines, followed by the rear brake lines, and then the master cylinder brake lines. So as far as how to remove them, there are some fittings right here that we're just going to use a box wrench with. And then there are these clips that are right down here for the front brake lines. And if you peel on the left and the right, you're going to see tabs. And if you peel those back, that center section, which is a piece of metal that holds the brake lines, will come right out. So we're first going to remove that, then we're going to go down. If you check on the bottom, there's actually two P-clips that hold the front brake lines in. We're going to simply unscrew those, and these should come right out. So now with the two lower P-clips undone, we're now going to pry back the tabs on this, this tie down right here. And there you see how that can just come undone like that. And now we're going to use a brake line. It's a 7/16 inch brake line tool to remove these. So now we can just undo these. Okay, so that is now undone. And there's another clip that's actually down here that we have to bend back, which I forgot to do. So let me see if I can do that. So we should be able to remove this brake line. Now it's actually underneath the steering column. This is pretty interesting. Are we going to be able to take this out? There it is. Okay, and so that is the passenger side brake line that we just took out from the car. So now let's remove the driver's side. Let me see if I can turn this by hand. Oh, I actually can. Go. Oops, some brake fluid's coming out. But that's the that is the driver's side brake line out of the car. So now let's take a look at the rear brake line, how it's routed and how it's connected. You can see it's going to start right here on the lower part of the back end of the manifold, gets routed here. This is the clutch slave cylinder line, the larger line here. There's another tie down like we saw before. It then goes behind this metal structure in front of the heater core. And you can see that front one, the brake line sits in front of the clutch cylinder line. Looks like there's a clip right here that needs to come undone. It's routed around here. Another one of those clips that holds both those lines in place that needs to be undone. And then it's routed down to the bottom of the car. You can see it's kind of sits now behind the smaller line, behind the clutch slave cylinder, and then down into the car here. So let's get down underneath and look at the connections there so we can see what we need to disconnect. So we're now underneath the car. Let me get you acclimated. This is on the passenger side. So that's the front of the car. I'm going to come back here. I'll show you the connections that we need to undo. So this is the rear brake line. You see it coming down here.
There's one of those hold down clamps that we have to take out, prying back the tab. And then there is a wire or a metal band wrap around. This is the power line from the battery. So we can start to undo this by first prying this back and taking this clip out. So it's good to kind of start these with a screwdriver. And then I think you can take a pair of pliers and bend them back. Now let's see if we can get this out. There. So that's now coming out. Should come out. There we go. So that is out. We'll just place that there. Here is the metal wrap with the power cord, power line. That frees up the brake line here. You can see there's a junction there. And now let's follow this back a little bit further. So now we're back here with the large grommet that holds all 5 of the lines and cables in. Just wanted to point out that the one that's closest to the passenger side is the rear brake line. That's then followed by this canister, charcoal canister line coming from the passenger side over to the driver's side. Then this is the power cable from the battery. And then, of course, we had the fuel line, which was on the outermost side here towards the driver's side. Again, passenger side moving over to the driver's side. So we have to take this rear brake line out of that grommet, just like that. And now we're going to proceed further backwards where that brake line is tied into the flexible rear brake line.
Okay, so now we're at the rear of the car facing forward, and you can see this is the rear brake line right here, and it comes back into the junction with the soft line. I don't know if you guys can see this, but right up here, and there's a 9/16" fitting on that just kind of comes undone. And then we unscrewed this, but that just comes undone there. Maybe some brake fluid coming out of there, but yeah. So now with the connections for the brake line undone underneath the car, we're going to come back up on top and undo these top ones. So this is a 7/16" brake line fitting wrench. I'm just going to come in here and unscrew this. Now we can turn this by hand. I think we have to now undo this clamp here. I've taken the liberty of bending this tab back. You've already seen me do it before, but now I can just remove this tie down metal fitting right here. This should allow me to pull this out of, there we go, out of the manifold. And now we have the screw over here that holds the metal fitting right here that holds both the charcoal canister and the rear brake line. So that is now out. And now there's another tie down over here, which I bent the tab back on before. That's the charcoal canister line. Let's get that out of the way. So that's now out. I am, however, seeing that it is still connected to the charcoal canister line with that fitting. Oh, it's a P-clip. There you go. It's great when your intuition actually is spot on. So let's spread this P-clip apart like that and remove it. And now the rear brake line should just come sliding right out from the car.
What do we got? We got the canister line that's sort of in the way. Maybe undo this switch from the manifold and slide it underneath that. So free that up there. So it's underneath the wire harness back here. That's interesting. Let me see if I can fish the whole thing up underneath it. There we go. And now that rear brake line is now removed from the car.
And so now with the rear brake line removed, let's remove the lines from the manifold to the master cylinder.
We'll start with this back one first. See if I can spin this by hand. I can. That one's undone there. Let's undo this one. That one's undone. So now with the two master cylinder brake lines removed from the manifold, let's go back and let's remove this one back here. If I can undo that by hand. There it is. Okay, now let's get the top one. All right, let's see if we can get this by hand. And I can. But now that one is undone. So let's see if we can fish these out. That was the top. And now this is the bottom. Fish this out like that, and that's the bottom. So now the lines to the master cylinder are out. And now let's remove this manifold. First, there's an electrical connection here that needs to come undone. This has sort of two tabs on it that have to be pried back, so that comes off. And then this is a 7/16 inch bolt down here. Spinning around, let me hold it. There we go, let's spin this off. And there's a lock washer here. And it looks like there's this spacer going into the body right there. So the manifold is now, brake manifold is now out of the car. So we're underneath the car, and the next piece we're going to take out is the charcoal canister line. That runs from, that's this line right here. It runs from the charcoal canister itself up by the firewall of the car all the way to the separation unit in the trunk, and it's comprised of two pieces. We're not going to try to take it out in one piece, we're going to take it out in two. Let me show you where that first connection is to remove the larger of the two pieces. And so it's a fitting with a 9/16 and a 5/8 inch that you sort of have to hold on there. Now I've already loosened it, so this will just unscrew. That's the 9/16, this is the 5/8. So now we just take that out and we can drop that. So now let's go back up top and remove it from the car. So this is the charcoal canister line. You can see I cut it from on the rubber fitting up here. And now that that's undone and disconnected from below, we should just be able to pull this right up and out of the car. All right, so let's take a look at the second half of the charcoal canister line. So we're underneath the car looking from the back to the front. And if we come up here, you're gonna see here is the line where we just disconnected it right from there. Sorry. If we follow that back, there's a P-clip right here, which I'm hoping you can see. There's a wire wrap right here, and then that has to come off. And then if we follow this line back, get some light back here, you're gonna see there's another, this is the line right here, there's another P-clip there. We're gonna follow this line back, and there's two P-clips on the gas tank, one there, one right down here, and then the last connection is right here going up into the trunk right here, which you can see. So those are the connections that have to come off. Let's start taking them off. So now let's use a 7/16 inch wrench and take off this first P-clip right here. Okay, can we spin that off by hand? I think we can. Okay, so that is off. See, we can simply remove the line from there like that. And that P-clip is off. Here's the wire wrap that we now have to undo. There, that wire wrap is now down. We'll leave that hanging. Again, moving further back, this is the gas tank. That's the rear end. Here's the line up here. It's a 7/16 inch P-clip right here. Take this out with a ratchet. That's off. Pull this P-clip down and off of there. Rotate it down like that. And you can see, here's the charcoal canister line. There's a P-clip connecting it right there. We're going to take that one out. These are 1/2 inch, and there's another one right back over here. All right, let's start taking these off. Again, 1/2 inch. The lock washer on that. Now let's take off this one back here. And the lock washer back here as well. I think I should be able to pry these down. And then this one here. Let's get this one. There we go, that one's off as well. We now can follow this all the way back to the last connection, which is right here. Now to remove this fitting down here, you need to use a 9/16 inch brake line tool to grab the fitting down here. But you also need to stop the top end of that from spinning. If we look in here in the trunk, you'll see that I've placed a 5/8 inch wrench on the fitting up here and jammed it up against the fender to stop it from rotating. And so with that now loosened, I can just spin this. So with this now loose, it's okay for you to transition to a traditional 9/16 inch box wrench to loosen this up. There we go. And now that's undone. And let's see if we can just pull this line out now. There we go. And now the back half of the canister line is out of the car. So the fuel line is out
All of the brake lines are out and the charcoal canister line is out as well. Before we head back to the studio, let's look at some of the episode outtakes and have a few laughs at my own expense. This is the sound that the cameraman makes when he realizes he hasn't turned on the close-up B-roll camera for a teardown scene. No! Okay, so next up is where is my fucking wrench is what's next up. Oh, you're killing me. You're fucking killing me. So that's a wrap for this episode of Maggie's Makeover. Maggie and I sincerely hope that you found the content both entertaining and useful when it comes to your own MGB. Now, make sure you tune in for the next episode where Mechanic Steve starts to disassemble Maggie's pedal box. Specifically, he's going to remove Maggie's master and clutch cylinder. Now, for those of you out there that really enjoy the content, click on this link. Subscribe to the channel. Go for the entire restoration ride with Maggie and I. For those of you who want to understand how to strip the interior out of your MGB, click on this link to the playlist of all those videos. Until the next episode, happy motoring.